very similar to when I started Indianapolis for the first time. I think it's going to be that sort of thing because there was a million questions in my mind before that race, and after the race, I was much more relieved. And I think it's very similar to that because there's a lot of unknowns out there, a lot of questions that will probably be answered on Sunday.
Now, one of the questions that Michael will answer today is how he gets his car rolling. He has never performed a Formula One standing start. For more on that, let's get down to trackside. And the third member of our team, international editor for Autosport magazine, here's James Allen.
Well, thank you, Bob, but don't ask me. Why not let's ask the man himself, Michael Andretti. You haven't done a standing start for over 10 years. What's going through your mind right now?
Hope I don't stall it. We're having a little bit of a problem, actually, with the clutch, so I'm a little bit worried for the start. It's dragging a bit, so they're working hard on it, so I hope it's okay.
Well, you're a very aggressive race driver. You're really going to have your work cut out at the start to cut through those cars in front of you.
Yeah, no question about it. It's going to be really tough. You know, you just can't pass here, and there's 8 cars ahead of me that are going to be very hard to pass, so, you know, hopefully I can have a good start and get a couple cars and just bring it home. That's all I need to do right now.
Is there any one thought that's going through your mind right now as you prepare for your first Grand Prix?
Just make it through the first turn and set a good pace and just bring it home, you know, and I think if I do that and not do anything stupid, hopefully I'll be up in the top 5 or so.
Best of luck, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thank you, James, and we all join in wishing Michael Andretti well as he makes his way to the car for his first Grand Prix start. We'll be back to introduce the starting grid and get things underway in just a moment. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of South Africa is brought to you by Volvo. Volvo would like you to drive safely. And by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Back at Kyalami, South Africa, Bob Varsha and Derek Daly with you. There sits Michael Andretti, who has not gotten out of his car from the time he drove it to the grid about 20 minutes ago to this moment as he contemplates his first Formula One start. Now, here's a look at the rules that the teams faced when they came into this weekend. The changes of the rules for 1993. Practice and qualifying sessions were reduced from 90 and 60 minutes to just 45 minutes each. The use of exotic power-boosting fuels heavily regulated. Each car limited to 28 dry weather tires. Some teams used more than 50 on a race weekend. Each rear tire width decreased from 18 inches to 15. The front tires narrowed as well. And they've decided to use an American-style pace car instead of a red flag to stop the race for major accidents. Derek?
Interesting point. One of the most controversial of those rules was the reduction in track time to 45 minutes. Well, we hear now this weekend that rule has already been rescinded.
We'll tell you a little bit later on about the rules for 1994 and 95, and they are very controversial. This is your pole sitter, Alain Prost, sharing the front row for the first time since 1991 in Belgium with Ayrton Senna. Let's take a look now at our Yamaha motorcycle starting grid for the first race of the year. On the pole for the first time since the French Grand Prix back in 1989, Alain Prost of France returning to Formula One in the Williams Renault. His lap averaging 125.9 miles an hour. Next to him, his former arch rival, Brazilian Ayrton Senna, who announced just 6 days ago he would return to race for the McLaren Ford team. On row 2, Michael Schumacher of Germany, last year's revelation in the Benetton Ford. Next to him, Damon Hill, son of the late Graham Hill, a 2-time world champion in the second Williams Renault. Row 3, Jean Alesi of France in the Ferrari. Ferrari struggling once again. Next to him, J.J. Leto of Finland in the all-new Sauber V10, Leto's best qualifying performance ever. Row 4, Riccardo Patrese, now in the Benetton Ford, next to Marc Blundell in the Ligier Renault. Row 5, Michael Andretti in the McLaren Ford, next to the second Sauber, driven by Karl Wendlinger of Austria. Row 6, Philippe Ayot in the LaRousse Lamborghini V12, next to Martin Brundle, making his 100th Grand Prix start, this time in the Ligier Renault. Row 7, Christian Fittipaldi. Father Wilson is here. I'm sure Uncle Emerson looking in. The Minardi Ford is his chariot. Next to him, the youngest man in the field, 20-year-old Ruben Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan Hart. Row 8, Gerhard Berger in the second Ferrari, next to Alessandro Zanardi of Italy in the Lotus Ford. Row 9, Johnny Herbert of Great Britain in the second Lotus, next to the Jordan Hart of Italian Ivan Capelli. His tough days at Ferrari long behind him. Row 10, Eric Comas of France in the LaRousse Lamborghini, next to Aguri Suzuki of Japan in the Footwork Mugen Honda. Row 11, Ukio Kadayama of Japan and Derek Warwick of Great Britain. Row 12, Andre De Cesaris of Italy in the Tyrrell Yamaha, next to Fabrizio Barbazza of Italy, the former IndyCar driver in the Minardi Ford. The 13th and final row, Michele Alboreto of Italy in the Lola Ferrari, next to Luca Badua of Italy in a second Lola Ferrari car. Just moments away, quickly down to James Allen.
Thank you, Bob. The million-dollar question is tire stops. The thing is, these cars are running on the softer compound, the B compound Goodyear. It's much, much better if you've got a traction control system, as some of these cars have. But I've just spoken to a few of the designers. Williams reckon that they're going to have to change after about 25 laps, and Ferrari is planning 2 stops.
Derek, a quick look at the track as the cars come to the grid.
Kyalami is a combination of old and new, but this relatively new track is blindingly fast, combining 150-mile-an-hour corners and considerable elevation changes. Biggest problem here, Bob, extremely difficult to pass.
James Allen was telling us about tire wear. We'll be watching that all the time with these new Goodyear tires. You see the field coming to a stop. Grab your volume control. When the 26 cars are in place, they will come under starter's orders. 26 feet will control unmuffled engines making over 700 horsepower apiece. Michael Andretti is back in the number 9 spot right there, getting set for his first Grand Prix start. On the right, Alain Prost. On the left, Ayrton Senna. Turn it up and enjoy. In the middle of the pack, Michael Andretti unable to get away from his starting position. The field scrambles around him. Someone else at the back of the field in one of the LaRousse cars stalled as well.
Michael Andretti, one of the biggest problems they have with... Oh, one of the Williams cars goes off.
Damon Hill. Damon Hill has spun off.
I was saying one of the problems with automatic gearboxes is at low revs, it's very difficult to select first gear. Michael had a problem this morning in the warm-up session. They worked very hard on it. Obviously did not cure it.
Eric Comas in the yellow and blue LaRousse car. And beyond him, it looked like Andre De Cesaris in the Tyrrell, but the race continues.
Spectacular start by Ayrton Senna. Got the revs. He practiced this 5 times that we saw during the weekend, during the official sessions to get it right. He was the only driver we saw do that as one of the Ferraris tried to slice down inside Wendlinger in the Sauber car.
This is the highest point, high atop a hill. Now they will fly downhill, very steep downhill here, known as the mine shaft.
Fastest part of the racetrack, 117 miles an hour down through the left-hander. Here we see the start. Poor Michael Andretti stuck on the grid, but look at Senna. Shoots down the inside and overtakes Prost.
Alain Prost just behind. Ayrton Senna, Prost. That was Damon Hill down the inside because he obviously spun once again in the 0 car. Oh, gets right back into traffic. Hill jumped into second place, Prost into third, but look at the lead. Ayrton Senna's pulling out.
Things happen so fast in F1, but here it is again. Now, Prost on the right side of your screen is very slow away. Here's the red lights, green. Look at Senna, shoots away. There's Damon
in the middle of the pack.
Almost hits the pedals on a Schumacher. Michael Andretti is stalled, as is one of the LaRousse cars, but Senna gets at it. All-important jump at the start.
And there goes Damon Hill, almost collecting his teammate, and Michael Schumacher made use of the situation in the yellow and green Benetton, flew around Prost into second place.
And we heard Michael on the start say the number 1 thing he wanted was get through the first corner, get consistent, and try and bring it home, but a bad start for Michael.
There goes the number 27 red Ferrari, sporting that white stripe, harking back to the Ferraris of Niki Lauda and Clay Regazzoni. That was the 27 of Jean Alesi, who has been absolutely savage in that car all weekend.
2 Sauber cars run together. They have put on a superb show for such a new team here this weekend. They say concept by Mercedes. Mercedes say it's not an official factory team, but they are backing this superb Swiss-based team.
There goes Alain Prost. There goes the Sauber of J.J. Leto, followed by teammate Carl Wendlinger. There is Jean Alesi. The running order is Senna, Schumacher, Prost, Leto, Wendlinger, Alesi, Blundell, Brundle, Patrese, and Berger, rounding out the top 10. And that is a great start for Berger, who was back in 15th spot and has moved all the way up into the top 10 after just a couple of laps.
There's the Ferrari. The two Ligiers run together. They've been very strong this weekend. Remember, they are out benefiting from a technical assistance from the Williams Grand Prix team. They actually purchased the automatic gearbox that Williams used so successfully last year and has really transformed or helped transform this car into a competitive package.
An outstanding early race performance in the first Grand Prix in the history of the Sauber organization. Former two-time sports car champions really doing well here. We'll be back for more coverage from South Africa. That is Ivan Capelli, who had so many troubled races with the Ferrari team, and now his first race with the Jordan Hart operation has come to a steamy conclusion.
Still watching the Sauber cars, J.J. Leto, managed by K.K. Rosberg, and Karl Wendlinger, some of the youngest drivers in the field here. But this car, they were prepared last year, began running and testing this car, and obviously benefiting from that testing. They were spectacular in winter testing, and people thought they're running underweight. However, they came here, legal weight, and were still very fast.
The key story in the early laps of this South African Grand Prix, Michael Andretti, who was unable to get away on the starting grid. James Allen has more on his situation.
Bob, you might recall when I spoke to Michael just shortly before he got into the car, he mentioned that he had a clutch problem. I've just spoken to his team boss here at McLaren, Joe Ramirez, the team manager, in fact, and he said to me, yeah, we thought we'd fix that clutch problem. I think he was rather implying that Michael just hesitated a little bit as he got away and just stalled the clutch slightly before getting away. Remember that these McLaren cars are running fully automatic transmission systems, which means it's all pre-programmed.
What a tremendous disappointment it must be for Michael Andretti. Meanwhile, Ayrton Senna has just that interval over Michael Schumacher in the green and yellow Benetton Ford.
And this is the two Ford V8 cars. Oh, look at Capelli's Jordan. He went in so hard backwards. You can see he virtually destroyed the right rear of that car. A fire did start. They did have fire extinguisher foam on that, but Capelli absolutely wasted one of Eddie Jordan's cars.
Boy, seeing it from the other angle, you thought he had just backed it in and walked away. That was a savage crash. Down mine shaft, very fast left-hander, 170 miles an hour or so, then a very tight right-hander right here. We almost saw Senna spin the other day in practice up that corner.
That's right. The corner they come through now is a fifth gear, absolutely flat out with a speed entering it at 170 miles an hour. Blindingly fast here in these F1 cars. That was Alain Prost we see dropping back, not as fast as he wanted to be earlier, but Schumacher this morning in the warm-up was half a second slower than Senna, and Prost was half a second faster than everybody.
A little bit earlier, saw Damon Hill spinning in the 0 car. Prost is in the sister car number 2. The number 1 was retired because the defending world champion, Nigel Mansell, the only man with any right to carry it, is not here. Prost was offered his choice of cars. He said, I am not driving the 0 car. I'll take the 2.
Take the 2. Now remember, there was big talk when Goodyear brought these new tires here as to whether these cars will have to stop, make a pit stop during the race or not. The two best men at looking after their tires are Senna in the lead and Prost running third. Alain Prost particularly does not necessarily need to run out front if he thinks he can protect his tires and his car to make a run later on.
Ayrton Senna pulling out a lead more than 2 seconds at the moment, and that is extraordinary. Recall that the McLaren team did not even know what engines they were going to be using until December when the contract was signed. Now, Ron Dennis reveals that they began design work on their new McLaren automobile, as you watch Alain Prost, in November. The normal gestation for a Formula One car from concept to rolling chassis, usually about 9 months. In just 4 months, the McLaren team built 4 brand new cars and a 5th chassis, and right now Ayrton Senna, who has had all of about a week of practice in the car, is rocketing away.
And at that stage, McLaren did not even know who their driver lineup will be. They were the unusual team here. They actually had 3 drivers dressed on Thursday, being fitted to the cars, went to the driver weigh-in, because Mika Hakkinen is also here. Now remember, we have a big one here.
Someone took a wheel off. That looks like Christian Fittipaldi in the white car just went out of the right of your screen, the Minardi Ford. And someone else limping away. I believe that's one of the... Is that Senna?
Well, we got a glimpse there. We
couldn't
think
be Senna.
Maybe the Marlboro car. It is Michael Andretti. Loses that left front wheel, so Michael got running again out on the track and has made heavy contact with Christian Fittipaldi, we think.
Adding insult to injury. Now there's J.J. Leto in the pits in one of the Saubers, and this is very long. Anything longer than 7 seconds in the pits in a Formula One car is a tragedy.
Well, Michael's day is over now. On the grid, if you see the times, he was 3 seconds slower than Senna. That is not representative of what Michael can do, because he did have engine problems all through the qualifying.
Let's get down to James Allen in the McLaren pits.
Yeah, Michael Andretti's just come in. He seems to have lost his left front wheel. There's marshals and McLaren mechanics pushing him in. He's got extensive black marks. The front left wishbones are completely destroyed, and you can see there's a lot of tire mark on the side of the left-hand side on that diffuser. But yeah, he's obviously had a heavy impact. He's just there. We'll hopefully catch a word with him in a moment. Back to you.
There you see Michael Andretti climbing out. We didn't know he made it back onto the track, but now his day is irrevocably done. Now here comes the third-place car of Alain Prost. Back after a one-year hiatus, took the pole for this race. Senna runs out of your picture. There goes Michael Schumacher. Here comes Alain Prost, who has a meeting in Paris next Thursday with officials of the international sanctioning body, the FISA. Prost was alleged to have made disparaging comments over the past year, during which he worked as a television commentator for French television. Terrible things supposedly said about the FISA, and there is a threat that Prost may have his super license to race these cars revoked, or possibly a ban or a fine. The question remains whether Alain Prost will be here for the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2 weeks. He says, if they try to ban me, I will quit Formula One for good. The remains of Michael Andretti's McLaren is backed into the garage. We'll be back with more coverage of the Grand Prix of South Africa in just a moment. Ever see a lion sneeze? There you have. Gesundheit, Leo. Wild animal preserves abound in the Johannesburg area of South Africa. They are truly great places to visit. To visit a lion up close, or perhaps a rhino, or a wildebeest. We're having a great time here in South Africa. The first race of the Formula One season in 1993 stars Ayrton Senna thus far. Let's get down to the pits and James Allen.
Michael, a very disappointed man. What happened?
Well, at the start, when I went to put the clutch in, it didn't disengage when I put it in gear, and it just crept forward, so it just stalled the engine. And then I got going, and I was trying to pass Warwick, and he got into trouble in front of him. So he almost hit the guy in front of him, and then I hit him. And it was just a chain reaction. I didn't expect him to slow down as quick as he did.
It must make you want to work even harder for your next race in Brazil. What are your preparations going to be for that race?
Hopefully a lot better than this one.
Thanks a lot.
You're on board with Damon Hill in the second Williams Renault. Derek Daly, what should Michael take away from this experience in your view?
Well, what should he take and what he will take may be totally different. I mean, the transition has been difficult. It's terribly disappointing to damage the car then. No matter how it happens, you're still responsible when you're in the car. But Michael has an uphill struggle. He believes in himself, though. Even after the qualifying session, he was 3 seconds slower. He actually believes in himself enough that he was not flustered at all. But look at the battle we have at the front of the field here with Senna, Schumacher, now and Prost. Prost still set the fastest lap, and look at Prost trying to go around the outside of Schumacher. Almost impossible.
Very twisty track, very difficult to pass, even though, as you can see, it is quite wide. Ayrton Senna must know this battle is moving up behind. This is the first, second, and third place cars. Senna, Wendlinger, and Prost. 2 3-time world champions sandwiching a young driver who has won just once in Belgium last year.
And this is where Senna says this McLaren is superb on the high-speed corners. That was the one thing that stuck in his mind after his early test at Silverstone. But Schumacher is very, very fast through that old sunset bend. That is the old part of the racetrack, as these S's are here. Then the cars run uphill, but look how much... Oh, Schumacher has a look down the inside of Senna. Look how much they've dropped Prost by.
I called him Wendlinger, his old teammate in the Mercedes sports car team. Of course, this is Michael Schumacher, and it's going to be interesting to see how he is going to get around Senna, if indeed he is. Wendlinger, meanwhile, back in 4th place in the Sauber.
Again, Schumacher, this is hard braking there. This is a third gear corner. They go 4th gear, 5th gear, and when they disappear here, that is a flat and 5th gear corner above 150 miles an hour. One of the most demanding corners on this blindingly quick Kyalami racetrack.
Keep in mind, we are at more than 5,000 feet above sea level, so the drivers are working in heat that is above 80 degrees, just the ambient air, not to mention what they're going through wrapped up in all their protective gear in these cockpits.
Now, Prost is very quick in the low-speed section, leading up to the pits, and then this is what happens here. Senna and Schumacher in the V8 Ford-powered cars seem to get away. Now, from here, the next third of the lap is where Schumacher closes up on Senna. So we're going to watch here up the hill where he can do the same thing again. This is it. It's from here on in now that Schumacher closed up on Senna the last time. Down through the S's, up the hill, under braking for the left-hander. Let's watch what happens here. Again, he closes up on him. Look at this.
Now, you can't see the apex of this turn, so they dive over that brow, and then they have a double apex left-hander, an extremely complicated series of corners. I wonder if Ayrton Senna recalls the run-ins he had with Schumacher last year, particularly in France, where they collided, knocking Senna out of the race.
Wendlinger in the Sauber. Again, you see Senna, under acceleration, pulls away from Schumacher and Prost. Now, this is where Prost closed up on Schumacher, under braking, and again, right up behind him, but not close enough to try and make an attempt to pass. Oh, Prost is very quick under acceleration. Very, very fast.
Winding through, they're side by side. Prost will try him on the outside at this corner, and he takes the position.
Such a difficult thing to do. He actually drove around the outside on the right-hander, cleared Schumacher. Schumacher actually didn't make it too difficult for him, thankfully, because they're doing over 155 miles an hour as they turn right. Now, Prost, who still has fastest lap, sets out after Senna.
Senna with the Ford V8 behind his back. Prost with the Renault V10, providing perhaps a little extra power, certainly revving higher. Here's another look at the Prost pass.
Now look what Schumacher does here. He moves to the inside to make sure Prost has to go around the long way. But here's the turning point. Right there, Prost just has the wheels ahead of Schumacher and got clear.
I'd say Alain Prost maintained most of his racing skills during his time off. He took a look down the inside of Senna there.
Prost is in full attack mode here. Now, Senna, remember, these two are not the best of friends. They do not send each other Christmas cards. But Senna will be very good, I think, at defensive driving. But we saw what Prost did. He hung back, warmed the tires up. Mr. Professor, they call him. I think we're seeing that type of driving display here.
Schumacher not out of that battle yet. Meanwhile, 18 make that 19.4 seconds back as the fourth-place car of Carl Wendlinger. So this is the battle in the race right now. Now, we also understand that Wendlinger is going to take a time penalty for blocking on the racetrack, a 10-second time penalty. Now, Schumacher closes up on Prost.
Just look at Schumacher. He ducks and dives inside Prost. Now, what Prost must do is keep an eye on his mirrors. He does not want Schumacher to get by him while he tries to catch Ayrton Senna.
Now, Carl Wendlinger is in for his time penalty, down to the pits, and James Allen
is now in the pits. The marshal's just stopping him, counting off the 10-second penalty, which is for blocking without the circuit. It's a new thing introduced last year, and he's back out in the circuit and back in the race.
So Wendlinger has been penalized. He will be well back now, almost 45 seconds once he gets back up to racing speed. His teammate J.J. Leto is out of the race. We'll be back. Come back to South Africa. Alain Prost goes to the outside. Senna runs up all the way out to the pit wall in a bid to take the lead in the South African Grand Prix.
And this is a dogfight. Remember, V8 power. Senna believes he is about 40 horsepower down on Alain Prost. The V10 Renault has more power, but when you're in the lead, you're allowed to use whatever piece of road you like, and Senna is a master at using the piece that Prost probably wants to use.
Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna have had so many run-ins over the years. Formula One fans will recall their battle in Portugal a few years ago as McLaren teammates when Senna almost put Prost into the wall.
This is going to be a difficult thing for Senna to hold off Prost, because Prost certainly looks to be a little bit faster. It is under acceleration in particular, exiting or entering the pit straight, that Prost is particularly good. That is probably where he can make the safest attempt at passing Senna.
I can't believe what we're watching. Senna hasn't been in a racing car for 3 or 4 months. Prost not in one in racing conditions for over a year. They're on tires that they know very little about performance-wise, and yet they're battling nose to tail like this.
And watch Senna's line, under brake. braking. Senna again brakes in the middle of the road. Now watch here. This is where Prost is very, very fast in the Renault. Exiting here. He's not close enough this time.
Quickly, James Allen has a comment from the pits.
Yeah, Bob and Derek, it's worth remembering this is a very high downforce circuit here at Kyalami, and Williams has chosen to run less downforce than McLaren. They have a slightly more powerful engine, but of course the V10 at high altitude doesn't work quite as well. So if you work all those things together, it would suggest that although the Renault is slightly faster in a straight line, that the McLaren has the advantage in the corners, and that would seem to be the case at the moment.
And of course, this McLaren is driven by one computer that talks to the engine, the gearbox, and everything else it needs to talk to. Electrical problems or electrical gremlins is what McLaren hope they have ironed out, because that took away so much of Michael Andretti's test time with this car.
Some people would say it's being driven by two computers, one electronic and one human, that being Ayrton Senna, perhaps the best driver of all time. Now, Prost looks down the inside. He may make a run off this corner.
Weaves under braking. Prost comes down the inside. Senna still uses the middle of the road, and Schumacher sticks with the two of them. Look at Senna again. Brakes in the middle of the road, forces Prost to the outside, and look at Schumacher. Has a little peek and a poke down the inside.
Now Prost looks down the inside, tucks in behind. We're coming up on Prost's favorite part of the racetrack. Off the turn, onto the start-finish straightaway.
Okay, he's closer this time. He's closer for a good run on Senna down this straight here.
Follows him through, nose to tail. It appears Alain Prost will not get it done this time, and he backs off once again out of the turbulent air behind Senna's McLaren. What lap are we on? I can't believe this. This is great racing.
There is a question whether Alain Prost is race fit or not. Now remember, no matter how much work you do in the gym, no matter how many weights you lift and how many miles you jog, you are never race fit until you're actually in a racing environment. So Alain Prost, I'm sure, is conscious of that and will be measuring exactly how much physical effort he puts into this battle.
We are working lap number 17 of 72. Incidentally, Carl Wendlinger's stop-and-go penalty dropped him from 4th to 8th place.
I think it's probably worth mentioning, too, when we talk about fitness, Senna has had 3 months on the beach in Brazil, never saw a racing car, and now he jumps back in. Oh, look at Prost down the inside.
Prost is trying to make something happen on that steep downhill called Mine Shaft, but you have this fast left-hander and then huge braking for this sharp right-hander.
Now, sometimes you might say that's blocking. I don't believe it is until you blatantly drive across in front of somebody. Senna is using the road that he is entitled to use. It is the difficult job of Prost to try and get back. As we look at the top 6, you can see Martin Brundle and Blundell in the Ligier cars in points-paying positions at the moment.
As you can see, they're well back of this battle. 27 seconds from Michael Schumacher back to Jean Alesi, doing a wonderful job in a very difficult Ferrari car. Ferrari has decided not to build a new car because of the instability in Formula One regulation. Oh! Damon Hill has been taken off in a collision with Alessandro Zanardi in the Lotus.
So not a good day for the number 2 Williams driver either. You can see heavy damage on the Lotus here. It looks like the Lotus was trying to come down the inside because it's the front of the Lotus car that has made contact with Damon Hill. 2 of the young guns making their Grand Prix debuts here at South Africa.
Here's another look behind the yellow and blue Lotus.
That's right, it is. Zanardi shoots down the inside. Now he has no hope of stopping. Locks up the wheels, locks up that front, clouts Damon Hill. That's it, all over. I would have to say Zanardi, 100% blame on his part.
Zanardi had a total of 35 laps in that Lotus. He was a late addition to the team when Mika Hakkinen was hired by McLaren. He had 35 laps in the car. The first day of practice here in South Africa, the team was keeping him to a pace so that he could learn the car. But then they thrust him into the race, and you see what just happened.
Okay, watch this, watch this. Prost has a good run here, but again, Senna's going to make... Oh, he tries the inside.
Oh, Senna comes back to keep the point.
My word, have you seen that? Senna chopped Prost, even though he knew Prost was going to have a look down the inside. Now we're in car with Alain Prost. Senna knew exactly where he was, chopped the nose off Prost. That is making a statement to Prost saying, hey, you're going to try and get by me. You need to do it in one fell swoop because I'm not going to give you any room at all.
This is in the Boma section. Those thatched cottages you see to the right on the hill above the racetrack make this a beautiful spectator circuit. They're called Bomas, which is indicative of the architecture in this part of the world. Now, once again, aboard with Alain Prost, closing in once again. We'll take a quick time out, but we won't let you miss anything. Stay with us. Back in Kyalami, South Africa, on a hot day, Alain Prost goes down the right side with a left-hand turn, approaching in a titanic battle with Ayrton Senna for leadership in the Grand Prix of South Africa. Bob Barcia, Derek Daly with you. Ayrton Senna leads, followed by Prost, Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, Mark Blundell, Martin Brundle, Ricardo Patrese, and Carl Wendlinger. Gerhard Berger and Philippe Ayot round out the top 10.
And this is where Prost is very good, under braking and accelerating onto this front pit straight here. He is all over Senna. Now he comes down the inside.
And this time Senna cannot shut the door, but he does get back out in front. I can't believe it.
Side by side at 157 miles an hour through the flat and fifth left-hand corner. Side by side. Arch rival Senna not giving him any room at all. Prost cannot believe the battle he's in. But now he comes down the inside.
Alain Prost is all over Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher in that green and yellow Benetton in close attendance.
Schumacher sits back there and said, boys, you go ahead and battle, because if you hit each other, I am in looking real good here because I'm so far ahead of everybody else. Michael Schumacher having a grandstand view of one of the battles. Well, it's the battle of the season so far. Let's hope it's a prelude to what's going to happen in the rest of the season.
Derek mentioned earlier, Prost and Senna have not always been the greatest of friends, but in their first real meeting, in the background, you see Damon Hill's Williams being pushed off after his collision. Alain Prost came face-to-face with Ayrton Senna. A little bit later, we'll tell you what happened.
Now, traffic could play a problem here. This is the back of the pits. This is fifth gear. Tiny lift from Prost. You could just hear it. Watch the braking. Little correction from Prost. Not close enough. No. I think Prost, you see the dirt on the camera lens? There must be some on Prost's visor, because you saw him wipe the visor with the back of his glove. He didn't actually pull a tear off yet.
It is still sunny on the racetrack, but there are towering black clouds surrounding the Kyalami racetrack, and there is a 60% chance of rain. I believe that chance is getting better and better as the afternoon wears on. They are famous here at Kyalami for afternoon thunderstorms. That's what they look like. We had a report that it is raining in downtown Johannesburg, which is barely 20 miles away. So we may see rain before this day is out.
The three cars here all using automatic gearboxes. You can see there between Senna and Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, there's 26 seconds. We've only done 22 laps, so you can see Senna pulling away from the Ferrari at over a second a lap. See Senna under braking, bobs and weaves a little bit. Prost again comes right up behind him under braking, and this is where he makes up a lot of his time. Oh, one of the Minardis.
It must be Fabrizio Barbazza. We already saw Christian Fittipaldi limping off. So those cars are out as this battle for the lead continues. We'll see if Alain Prost tries the inside again. He ducks inside. Can Senna hold him off? I don't think so. Not this time. No, Alain Prost moves into first.
Prost gets the lead. We're now inside Senna's car, but Prost, I believe, was being held up a little bit. Senna didn't manage to hold him off as he turned into the left-hander, had to give way, and now look, within, what, the length of one straight, Prost pulls out almost half a second.
If you were with us a year ago, you may remember the camera shot of Senna shaking his fist at Ricardo Patrese, and now Schumacher goes down the inside to take second from Senna.
And now Senna could be in trouble. He loses 2 places in less than half a lap. Schumacher takes advantage of whatever problem Senna has. There's the dark black skies that may bring rain for us. But Schumacher, look, within what, 3 corners, he pulls away about half a second from Senna.
As this battle cools a little bit, there in the background you see Alessandro Zanardi's Lotus being pulled off. He collided with Damon Hill's Williams. Of the 26 cars that started the race, it appears at this point we are down to 14 by my unofficial count. 12 cars are out of the race.
We don't know where the... Oh, Schumacher's in.
And just behind him, Senna.
tire wear, whether it would be a factor or not, but Schumacher and Senna are in for tires. Let's go to James Allen.
Michael Schumacher's come in, Ayrton Senna has come in as well. Both at the same time, arrived and stopped. 4 fresh tires, just been scrubbed in, that's all. Races brand new. Senna gets away first, Schumacher is behind him. What a dynamic pit stop from the McLaren team.
And that is a classic example of how fast pit work, and nobody does pit work faster than Formula One, can put your man out front. Senna came in 6.85 seconds from the McLaren boys. He went back out, passing Schumacher in the pits.
It is so difficult to make a pass on the racetrack. Schumacher finally managed it, but take a bow, everybody on the McLaren pit crew, they have just given their man back second place. Now, what about Alan Prost? Will he have to stop for tires? He is probably the best driver, or one of the 2 best with Senna, on keeping his tires in good condition.
Now there is a picture that makes me out to be a liar. That was J.J. Leto. We saw his car being pushed around in the pits. I assumed he was out of the race. Not the case. The Sauber is still out there. On board now with Alain Prost, who begins to lengthen his lead. The question is, will he need to make a pit stop soon? And if so, how fast can the Williams team make it? Stay with us. Alain Prost comes in. The Williams team is ready. James Allen standing by.
Alain Prost is in the pits. The team is changing 4 tires. Williams is not famous for its quick pit stop, but he's slightly stalled the clutch. He tried to get it away, so he lost a little time, I would say, with respect to Senna and Schumacher. Slightly slower stop.
Slightly slower stop, but he pulls back on the racetrack. Have to double check and see if he's in the lead. Just behind you saw one of the Lola Ferraris, and yes, I believe that is Ayrton Senna coming up from behind with Michael Schumacher in tow. Alain Prost still leads.
Prost still leads. Remember, they still use tire warmers in F1, so Prost, as soon as he gets fresh tires on, can run them extremely hard immediately. But we can see already Schumacher sets fastest lap on his new set of tires as we watch Zanardi go off into the bush, having a look to see can he find some of those lines that sneezed earlier.
I'm so glad the World Feed people make the same mistakes we do. That was not Michael Schumacher walking into the reeds. Alain Prost with the lead. Now all 3 of those pit stops, Prost, Senna, and Schumacher, took place with a big fat lead over the 4th place car, Jean Alesi. So the order remains: Prost, Senna, Schumacher, Alesi, Mark Blundell now 5th, followed by Riccardo Patrese, Paul Wendlinger, Gerhard Berger. Ruben Barrichello, the 20-year-old rookie, is in 9th place. Christian Fittipaldi appears in 10th, so he was not out. He must have been chugging along by the side of the road. Behind him, Johnny Herbert, Felipe Ayo, Michele Alboreto.
As we watch the top 6, we can see Patrese, the 2nd Benetton, has moved into the last points-paying position. Now, I think we have to look at this. 25 laps. There is actually 2/3 of the race still to go. Maybe we might have another pit stop. One of the advantages, of course, is there's 25 laps worth of fuel, which is weight already burned off, which means it's easier on the tires from here on in. But we may see 4 pit stops.
We can't overemphasize the fact that these new 15-inch rear Goodyear tires have performed admirably this weekend, but we don't know, and the Goodyear engineers will admit, they don't know how far they'll go before they lose their edge. The driver decides when to come in. Each of the teams has at least 3 scuffed sets ready to go, but there may be more pit stops needed.
This is a tremendous battle here. Schumacher has the state-of-the-art Ford V8 engine, and that means that he has pneumatic valves in that engine, allows it to rev better, be more reliable, and possibly produce more power. Senna thinks he's 40 horsepower down to the Renault, not to Schumacher. Senna hopes he can have what Schumacher has within a couple of races, as we watch Derek Warwick still hold off. One of the Ferraris?
One of the Ferraris it is, Derek Warwick, who you heard mentioned get caught up in the incident that took out Michael Andretti. Behind Warwick, one of the Ferraris, that is the 28 car, I believe, of Gerhard Berger.
Gerhard Berger had a difficult weekend here. This Ferrari was not very fast when it went to Imola for its initial testing. In fact, it was as much as 7 seconds off the pace. One of the Ligiers go to the pit lane, but Berger is quite happy to work with different active suspension systems here, using this weekend as a test session, because Alesi has been faster all weekend. In fact, that looked like Alesi.
That is Alesi. It is the 27 car. It is not Alain Prost. It is Jean Alesi who's been driving the wheels off this machine, consistently outperforming Gerhard Berger, who's been hampered by the new Ferrari Active Ride self-leveling suspension system. Berger says he hasn't had consistent pressure in it all weekend. Alesi doing a tremendous job. Now he's trying to put a lap on Derek Warwick.
Of course, one of the easiest ways to tell who's in the car is by the helmet design and color scheme. Unfortunately, Berger and Alesi use red, white, and blue, so everything about that car, including the driver's helmet, is very, very similar on a TV monitor.
There you see the gap, first to fourth, 18.405 seconds. Now, aerodynamics are absolutely everything in contemporary Formula One. In a track fact, James Allen takes a closer look at the aerodynamics in the garage area.
Michael.
Guess what? Moustaches have gone out of fashion in Formula One this year, and it's not just because Nigel Mansell's gone to race Indy cars. It's also happening in aerodynamics. Last year, you remember, Jordan had that lovely mustache front wing, which created enormous amounts of downforce from the extremities, the wing tips. Well, this year they can't do that because the regulations call for a much narrower front wing. And so this is their solution to that problem. They've maintained a high nose. In fact, they've gone to an even higher nose. And from the center of that nose, they have suspended the front wing. And they tell me that it gives them a 20% increase in downforce with a 3% loss in drag, so it's a fantastic solution. The air passes over the top of the wing, under the driver's legs, down to a central splitter in the middle of the body. It's then channeled evenly into both radiators. Well, the design team is really happy with this solution. And believe it or not, so are the drivers. Although they have to sit in what looks like an incredibly uncomfortable position, it is in fact no more uncomfortable once you get used to it, so they tell me, even in 120-degree race conditions for an hour and a half, sitting back just like you at home.
Back in Kyalami, South Africa, Bob Barsha, Derek Daly with you. Dark clouds on the horizon as you ride with Ayrton Senna of Brazil in second place in the South African Grand Prix. We are working lap number 34. Senna trying to hold back Michael Schumacher for second place. Alain Prost now 11 seconds up the road. Let's get down to the pits now and James Allen.
Well, I'm down here with Leo Mel of Goodyear. We're looking at Alain Prost's right rear tire that came off at that stop just a few moments ago. Leo, what did we learn from this tire?
We learned that traction control is helping the wear a lot. The cars with traction control, like Alan, have lost about 1/3 of the tire in 30 laps. Those without traction control had lost about 50%.
So are the cars going to need to stop again this race?
I don't think so. It will be close for the cars without traction control, but I think they'll make it.
Well, Goodyear was concerned about these new narrow tires. Have some of your worries been assuaged now that you've seen how they work in the hot conditions here at Kyalami?
Yeah, I think the traction control saved us.
Thanks a lot. Back to you.
You heard Leo Mel refer to traction control, electronically controlled systems that prevent wheel spin and, as he mentioned, save the tires. Just one of the elements that may be banned from Formula One in future years, and we'll have more to say about that in just a little bit. Right now, Ayrton Senna trying to hold off this man, Michael Schumacher.
Traction control and automatic gearboxes, they're the buzzword up and down the pit lane at the moment. If you look closely at the McLaren, you can see an aerodynamic device bolted onto the side of each side of the car, just ahead of the radiator intakes. See it right there? McLaren used that yesterday for the first time. Every photographer in the place came down to take a picture of it, and they say it enhances the airflow around the rear wheels, believe it or not, which actually makes the traction control better. So airflow on these F1 cars, so vital, even in the small, tiny areas. Our Wendlinger's day looks as if it is back over.
He was in 6th place, but he is now obviously out of the race, so your order will be Prost, Senna, Schumacher, Patrese, Mark Blundell, Christian Fittipaldi in position to take his second World Championship point. The first came a year ago in Japan.
Well, Christian Fittipaldi having a great run, but look at Schumacher again. Under braking again is where he seems to be able to close up on Senna. Senna then passes the pit lane to flat right-hander, flat left-hander up to 160 miles an hour. He's just able to draw a tiny bit of breathing space, but Schumacher not able to get close enough.
There you see the running order at the moment. 35 laps complete, working lap number 36, just about the halfway mark in this South African Grand Prix. Alain Prost now 15.7 seconds ahead of this battle, the best battle on the racetrack. No other gap anywhere near this close. The rest of the gaps averaging about 15 seconds at this point, as a matter of fact. Alain Prost has just reset fast lap of the race, and at this point, the little Frenchman appears poised to just run away with this race in as dominating a fashion as Nigel Mansell did 1 year ago with the Williams team. 75 miles an hour or so downhill into the left-hander. Now the sharp right. Schumacher beginning to close up a little bit.
Again, it's under braking. There's the uphill run, flat in fifth gear corner, swoop through here. Heavy braking here for Schumacher, but again, he does not have enough power to draw by Senna. And in the opening, we did mention the most difficult thing about Kyalami, although it is blindingly fast, it is not very easy to make a pass.
Two evenly matched competitors. Now Schumacher begins to drop back. We'll take a quick timeout and return for more coverage of the first race of the Formula One season. Stay with us. Back at Kyalami, South Africa, there is Johnny Herbert. So many times last year we spoke about his terrible misfortunes on the racetrack, and now in the first race of the 1993 season, it appears he is done.
Came here with very high hopes after a spectacular test by Herbert and Zanardi of this new car at Snetterton in England. However, they don't feel they got enough horsepower out of the engine here, so that's something they have to work on to make that car a little bit faster.
We are past the halfway mark. It's time for our Suzuki Motorcycles mid-race recap. Your leader, Alain Prost, who took over the lead with a spectacular pass over Ayrton Senna back on lap 24. Prost has led the last 15 laps. The running order at this point: Prost, Senna, Schumacher, Patrese, Mark Blundell, Emerson Fittipaldi, Gerhard Berger. Oops. Michael Schumacher has spun on the racetrack. He was in third position.
And worse still, he stalled the engine. If he had managed to keep the engine running, he would have been able to get down okay, but he's got the steering wheel off because he knows there's nothing he can do.
Well, I said the running order was Prost, Senna, Schumacher. Make that Prost, Senna, Patrese, Blundell, Fittipaldi, Gerhard Berger. As you take a look now, Schumacher coming up the inside of Ayrton Senna for second place.
And this is what happens. Senna squeezes him, they touch, and Schumacher goes into a lazy spin. Senna goes down the outside, but Schumacher tried to make the bold move on Senna, and it costs him dearly. Here he comes down the inside. Look at Senna. Squeezes him, bang, hits him right there. Schumacher goes into a spin. Senna slightly offline, but Schumacher's day is over with a bold move on Senna. You cannot make bold moves on Senna. Sometimes you don't get away with it.
I think the look on Schumacher's face says it all, and I think Senna's the man he's looking for. There is Senna. It appears no damage to his car as a result of banging wheels with Schumacher. They are now even. Schumacher knocked Senna out in France last year. Senna has knocked Schumacher out here in Kyalami, South Africa. Fastest lap reset once again by Alain Prost, just running away from this field. 20 seconds up now over the second place car by Ayrton Senna, followed by Riccardo Patrese, Mark Blundell, Christian Fittipaldi now up into fifth spot. Gerhard Berger is sixth, followed by Martin Brundle, Michele Alboreto, Derek Warwick, J.J. Leto, and Eric Comas.
Well, the Schumacher fans, you saw them there with their banner. They're only now beginning to realize that their man is finished for the day. The problem here, as we watch Frank Williams, again, obviously sitting in his wheelchair in the pit lane, they have a complete television and screen system set up for Frank, actually in the garage, so he's not out in the sun if the sunshine is there. But I mentioned earlier on, the braking distances are so short on these cars that you have to get alongside somebody to take the line away. Otherwise, you get in difficulty, which is what we saw happen to Schumacher.
Now Ayrton Senna closes up to put a lap on his McLaren teammate of a year ago, Gerhard Berger. Jean Alesi stepped out of his Ferrari earlier. He lost pressure in that self-adjusting suspension system. Ironically, that was the problem that plagued Gerhard Berger all week, who never completed a session Friday or Saturday. Now Berger is still in the running, Alesi is out, and this man, Alain Prost, leads.
In total control, automatic gearbox, hydraulically, electronically controlled suspension, electronically controlled almost everything on these cars. I spoke to Patrick Head earlier about these electronic gearboxes, and believe it or not, as we see again Prost wipes his visor, the biggest advantage to an electronic gearbox is not the speed of the shift. It's the fact that the cars now are so fast that the driver needs his hands on the steering wheel at all times to control the cars at such huge speeds through the corners. That, he believes, is the biggest advantage. Another point, we watched Patrese make a run for the pit lane. So Patrese makes his pit stop, the only Benetton still running.
Patrese in third place when he pitted, and he had 22.9 seconds over the next car. Out in a huge cloud of tire smoke, Ricardo Patrese knows just how close Mark Blundell is behind him.
Oh, look at Warwick and Comas. This is a battle for position. They're now catching the Lola of Alboreto, but now Prost is in the middle of this traffic jam.
Prost picks off Eric Comas and closes up on Derek Warwick. Warwick moves aside to let the leader through. Gerhard Berger up into 6th place, as you see. Christian Fittipaldi set to pick up 2 World Championship points now. Points are scored, 10 for first, followed by 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Those are the point scorers right there with 42 laps complete.
We're watching Alboreto. This is the new Lola Formula One car, really not in contention for anything except the back row of the grid all weekend. Was never fast, has a Ferrari V12 engine in it, but really was not on the pace at all weekend. A frustrating time for Alboreto, who is so experienced, and I'm sure the successful days at Ferrari and Tyrrell seem so far away now. Working lap number 43. The lap's beginning to run down for Alain Prost, looking to extend his record for Formula One victories with his 45th. Stay with us. The rain, thank goodness, holding off, but only just in Kyalami, South Africa. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen, glad to have you with us for the Formula One Grand Prix of South Africa. Now, we mentioned that there will be new rules in 1994 and 95. Key among those, eliminating computer-aiding driving technology, such as automatic anti-lock braking, traction control, active suspension, and so on. Earlier this weekend, we caught up with FISA President Max Mosley to ask him about banning technology.
Well, I think there are certain problems coming. The main one is that if we don't do something, the cars will be driven largely by computers, and that's obviously undesirable. There's also, of course, a cost explosion behind that, but the main thing is to make sure the drivers drive the cars unaided. If you want to have a device that stops people over-revving on a down change when they get into the wrong gear by mistake, that's perfectly easy to do, but it doesn't mean you've got to have a gearbox that takes away all the skills of the driver. So there is an argument even there, but basically you really want to stop all those items which one by one take away the classic driver skills. European cars can't run at Indy unless the Indy people want them, but the plan is to make just the cars so that they're able to run on ovals, and then there are ovals being built in various parts of the world. There are also ovals in the States, so it will give us a flexibility. At the moment, we're restricted to road circuits. Well, we've trouble finding a road circuit, for example, in the USA, but there are plenty of ovals, so it's quite logical. If we want to race in the USA, or indeed in various other parts of the world, if the cars are suitable for racing on ovals, it's another possibility for it. We've not talked to Tony George about running Formula One cars on the Indy Oval, because we're not ready to do it yet, and when that time comes, then he and Bernie should talk. But we've had a lot of conversations with Tony George about various things to do with motorsport and Formula One, and obviously he runs a very interesting operation.
And there is so much talk this weekend about oval track racing. Such is the demand or the interest in Europe now for American-style oval track racing that even Mosley and Bernie Ecclestone are talking about making Formula One cars to race on ovals. Now, the F1 people simply think we can modify our cars. I don't think they can just modify existing Formula One cars, that they are simply not suited to oval track racing.
Let's run down those rules that will be voted on next week to come into effect in 1994. Eliminating computer-aided driving technology, anti-lock braking, traction control, active suspension, semi-automatic gearbox, etc. Requiring teams to use the same engine for practice, qualifying, and the race. Modifying chassis to stabilize the cars for oval racing, and allowing refueling so that the cars can run up to 500 miles. Oh, and Ricardo Patrese is off.
And he's got to keep this car running, because he knows if he stalls in the sand trap, he is finished. So you saw what he did, and he didn't make it. That's exactly what he feared. We saw as he left the racetrack, he actually accelerated and then slowly buried himself. Patrese will not get out of that sand trap. His day is over, too.
He is high-centered. You see all the course marshals, their faces painted by sunblock. It has been absolutely scalding here in South Africa the last couple of days. And Ricardo Patrese could probably scald something pretty well right now, too.
You can see how much sand and gravel he filled into that air intake. So even if he did manage to get through, he either would have blown up the engine because of lack of cooling or would have had to make a lengthy pit stop anyway. But the amazing thing is how quickly these gravel runoff areas stop these cars, even when they leave the racetrack at 150 miles an hour.
There is Mark Blundell, who wears the legend, the will to win, on his helmet, handed down from his grandfather. We are down to 10 cars still remaining. Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Mark Blundell, now third, and will get his first Formula One podium. Christian Fittipaldi, Gerhard Berger, Martin Brundle. Can you imagine if both Ligets got into the points after the struggles they've endured the last couple of seasons? Michele Alboreto, who was on the last row of the grid at the start, is now up into 8th spot. Make that 7th spot with Ricardo Patrese out. J.J. Leto also in the running, and Eric Comas.
Great run here by Mark Blundell. On the fringes, really, of Formula One success for the last couple of years. He was a test driver for Williams at one stage. He was a test driver for McLaren last year. He did an on-off season with the uncompetitive Brabham for a year. And finally, he gets the break to step into a car right at the time when they seem to be getting good technology. And he's obviously making best use of it. So Mark Blundell, ex-motocross rider, won the Le Mans 24-hour race last year driving for Peugeot, has been very, very fast in the past, and now he has a car to show what he's worth in Grand Prix racing.
There is J.J. Leto in that all-new team run by Swiss Peter Sauber, using an engine, a V10, built by Ilmor, the same people who build the Chevrolet Indy V8 engines. This is a normally aspirated V10. Carl Wendlinger is out of the race, but J.J. Leto will give them a finish, it would appear, and that in itself is an achievement.
Good battle here, even though it is not for position. What a shame because of the problems Leto had earlier on. But Blundell, I mentioned earlier, they bought the Williams gearbox from Williams. They also, remember, have the Renault V10 engine. So actually from the rear bulkhead back is virtually the same as last year's Williams. And remember, last year's Williams is the key, because this year's Williams is faster. But Blundell looks really good.
Amazing how things change in Formula One. Once upon a time, a Ligier was the car to have if you were going to succeed in Grand Prix racing. This team was sold in November of last year by Guy Ligier to Cyril Derouve, the mayor of Chaumont in France. And they scandalized the French press by hiring 2 English drivers to drive these French racing blue cars. I imagine there may be a little bit different tune being sung in the French press if they both finish in the points.
Exactly. Now, not just a French blue car, French-backed, the sponsorship, they have government backing. Now, although Guy Ligier has nothing to do with running this car, he actually still owns 20% of the team as we watch a dejected Philippe Alliot, who was so good in practice and qualifying, but he was in the LaRousse, and his day is also over.
Meanwhile, the Michael Schumacher saga continues. Here's James Allen.
Bob, it's quite incredible. I tried to get a word with Schumacher. He is fuming. You can see steam literally coming off his overalls. It looks as though it's coming out of his ears. He's absolutely furious with the way that Ayrton Senna, he feels, took him off the race course, and he's just walked right the way down the pit lane, just elbowing aside journalists and cameramen to go straight to race control to complain to the stewards. Looks like an official complaint from Michael Schumacher.
Keep following that story. The saga continues here at the opening round of the World Driving Championship. We'll be back with more from a hopefully dry Kyalami, South Africa. Back in Kyalami, South Africa, there is Christian Fittipaldi, whose father Wilson, a former Formula One driver, is watching his son in action. There you see the gap from Fittipaldi back to the pursuing Gerhard Berger. Right now, he's got clean rear-view mirrors and a bit of clean track in front of him. Fittipaldi 36 seconds behind the third-place car of Mark Blundell.
The Minardi team entered the Formula One World Championship in '85, but it looks as if they have their best package right now. This again is the Ford V8 Cosworth engine, which really is a very good package. Now, one of the things Christian had trouble with in practice, he does not have a fully automatic gearbox. He has a sequential gearbox, and you change gear just like you change gear on a motorcycle or a go-kart. But when he goes from 6th gear to 3rd gear for a corner, he doesn't have enough time to go down through the gearbox. Such is the closing speed of the apexes of these 3rd gear corners here.
Speaking of semi-automatic gearboxes, the box of Rubens Barrichello in his Formula One debut broke, so he is out of the race for the Jordan Hart team. Ayrton Senna goes around Derek Warwick.
Ayrton Senna, no problem. We saw Warwick look left and right to try and move over and let him by, but Senna really now can only rely on a reliability run, but he's very pleased with this car, and was, after he tested it for a couple of days, he thinks it is an excellent car, and they are working feverishly to try and get on the same engine program that Benetton is on, because they do have more horsepower. And I think Cosworth knows that if Senna had 15 or 20 more horsepower in qualifying, he would have been on the pole.
Here comes J.J. Leto. Then it looks like Marc Blundell, and then the race leader, Alain Prost of France.
So it's hard to believe that Alain Prost, in about maybe half a lap, will put a lap on Marc Blundell, and then he will have lapped everybody except Ayrton Senna. Such is the display being put on by Prost at the moment. Now, we're familiar with this Williams car and its performance. Remember, with the hydraulically controlled suspension, it is almost as good on full tanks as it is when the fuel is burned away. Look at Blundell, sees him coming, moves aside, and Prost easily goes down the inside. He was offline, though, and you see where the sparks come off the rubbing strip underneath that car.
Alain Prost came into this race with a year's sabbatical under his belt, but also with more Grand Prix wins than any other driver. 44. Absolutely astounding the way he has trounced this field for his 45th victory, should he get it today.
Had a monumental crash a couple of weeks ago at Estoril testing when he had the Williams think a brake failure. Prost thinks it was probably the biggest crash he's had in his career. He said he was sick and sore for almost 3 weeks. So he started out here on a very easy note in practice and qualifying. Was spectacular because himself and Senna actually traded pole positions during the last qualifying session. But we can see now in a race condition, Prost is head and shoulders and rear wing and front wing above everybody else here.
13 years in Formula One, and what a stunning career. The 44 victories I mentioned. He won at least one race in each of his first 11 seasons. Oh, Eric Comas! There goes a Lamborghini V12 in dramatic fashion. Can you hear it just rattling away?
You better get off the power, because when you get smoke like that, the next thing you get is expensive holes in the side of the engine. So there's going to be a Lamborghini. Here it comes, more smoke. I'm not sure he's going to make it back to the pits. Either he doesn't see the smoke, but surely he feels the loss of horsepower by now. Here's some flames. We could barbecue this thing by the time he gets another half a lap. Yeah, now he sees it. Now he sees it. He looks in the mirror, sees the blue smoke, and now he will just try and make his way as easily as possible back to the pit lane.
Of course, he may be depositing a thin layer of oil all the way around as he does that, which won't be appreciated by his opponents.
And you can see, oh, he doesn't even know. He doesn't know. He even passed by his pit. He will do one more lap. If that engine lets go, unfortunately, he's staying on line. He could deposit a lot of unwanted oil on the racing line.
Let's get down to the pits to James Allen, who has more on engines.
Yes, I think it's worth pointing out that Marc Blundell, who's running very well in this race, he has exactly the same Renault engine as Alain Prost, who's leading. He has the RS5 Renault engine. He also has a gearbox which Ligier bought from Williams at the end of last season. It's the semi-automatic gearbox, ironically, which he helped to develop for Williams when Blundell was a test driver for them in 1990. So you see he has a finger in every pie, and he's running really well in this race.
3 Renault V10s up front, 2 Ford V8s, and 1 Ferrari V12 in the top 6. We're going to take a quick time out, but we want to remind you about ESPN National Hockey Night, Tuesday the 16th, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live here on ESPN. From the Spectrum in Philadelphia, the Minnesota North Stars and the Philadelphia Flyers. The North Stars led by forward Mike Modano. The Flyers by forward Mark Recchi, who has over 100 points at this point in the season. March 16th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live here on ESPN. We'll be back to Kyalami in just a moment. In the pits at Kyalami, South Africa, Eric Comas, who moved over from the Leger team to the LaRousse Lamborghini team, finally saw the blue smoke billowing from the back of the car, and he has parked it in the pits. You have to wonder what he thought as he watched his old Leger running around in front of him in the hands of Mark Blundell, who is now in 3rd place in the South African Grand Prix.
And I think something interesting as a footnote for this team, they bring to Formula One the very first sponsor from the Eastern Bloc country, from Czechoslovakia. It is actually a computer software company, and in fact, they have bought a stake in this team. They own shares in the team.
Up front, Alain Prost circulates, now working lap number 56. He has 42 seconds in hand over the second-place car of Ayrton Senna. In fact, Senna remains the only car unlapped in this race by Alain Prost. I just can't get over it. A year out of the car, tests it some. It's a measure, truly, of the Williams-Renault combination. This car is just so good.
The amazing thing about this car is when it came out last year, it began to run very strongly. There are so many electronic devices on this car that you think surely reliability will be the big problem. When I spoke to Adrian Newey yesterday about all the electronic gizmos and asked him why are they so reliable, he looked at me and he said, to be quite honest, it even surprised us how reliable this car has been. But you know, computers and electronic devices develop every day, and they are very reliable now. Let's go down to James Allen.
Derek, the weather here is deteriorating very rapidly. The wind has been getting up over the last couple of minutes. The flags are really fluttering on top of pit lane, and just a few seconds ago I felt my first spot of rain on my left shoulder. I haven't felt one since, but the clouds are very black and looming and ominous, so this could put a whole new face on the race shortly.
Indeed, there could be drama. There you see how the wind has come up. The United States flag flying in honor of Michael Andretti, who's had such a disappointing weekend. The car stalled on the grid, and then he tangled with another machine just a couple of laps into the race. The race leader, Alain Prost, with J.J. Lehto just behind him.
We saw a quick flash earlier of the top 6, and we saw Brundle appear back into the top 6. He was there earlier, but he had an incident and broke a front wing, got himself a lap down, but now he's crawled back up into that 6th and final points-paying position.
Alain Prost with pole, a possible victory, surely the fast lap of the race, set back on lap 40, 1:19.4, almost 2 full seconds slower than the race record held by Nigel Mansell in a Williams-Renault just a year ago. Now, the rain is beginning to fall harder. It's going to be interesting to see if Alain Prost will stay out there. He has a huge gap on the racetrack. He could come in for wets if they are ready. But I would imagine as long as the track stays dry at all, he'll stay out there on his slicks.
Well, he will, and of course the rest of the field will judge or make a judgment on what they will do on what Alain Prost does. But you can clearly see the rain now falling, lightning strikes over to the left-hand side of this racetrack. So the rain beginning to fall in the pit lane. We could have a deluge in 5 minutes here.
90,000 tickets sold for this race, 15,000 of them in just a couple of days after Ayrton Senna announced that he would come here to race. That was 6 days ago. They added 15,000 extra seats, and I would imagine those grandstands are emptying rapidly. Now let's talk about wet tires. Once again in the pits, here's James Allen.
Well, it's worth remembering that Goodyear had very little time to get these new narrow 1993 tires together. There's been some testing of the slick tire, but no testing whatsoever of the wet tire. So if they do get forced to put them on in the late stages of this race, it'll be the first time that these new Goodyear grooved wet weather tires have been used. A whole new lottery. You might as well just throw the dice.
Oh, and Ayrton Senna is absolutely legendary in the wet. There could be a whole new race here in just a couple of laps, and we have very few left. We're down to about 14 laps to go.
Remember Spa, Belgium last year in the damp conditions. Senna stayed on slicks, and he was absolutely spectacular. I would tell you now, Senna's only chance, I think he would probably say, to win this race, I bet he hopes for rain. He loves the rain. He's so talented, is able to run the car right on the limit that I will assure you he will be faster than Prost in the rain.
In fact, if Prost ducks in for tires, Senna could make up the gap by staying on his slicks. And as Derek has mentioned, on slicks, he can handle considerable water. Michele Alboreto, the Pagliacci of Formula One, laughing on the outside, but I'm sure crying on the inside. Not too many seasons ago, he was contending for the championship. His Ferrari engine has let go in that Lola chassis for the Scuderia Italia team. That brings us down to 9 cars remaining out of 26 that started. I guess you can expect that kind of attrition when we get the first race of the year under the extraordinary thin air and hot temperature conditions of South Africa. A little bit of a slip there for Ayrton Senna. We'll be right back with more. This is the Golden City, Johannesburg, not least of which because of these yellow piles of mine tailings. They produce billions of dollars in gold and riches here in Johannesburg, a city built around the post office tower. We'll be back. Kyalami in the closing laps. Martin Brundle, who we mentioned earlier, had to pit after a broken wing, now appears to have lost the drive entirely, Derek Daly.
And in fact, he spun. He did actually spin. That was his teammate, Mark Blundell, just goes by on the inside. So Brundle, having had an incident earlier on, got himself into 6th place. And you can see, look at that front wing. It is loose on the car. He's been off the road, has done too much damage. Remember, you're not allowed push start these cars, so he is dead for the day.
Martin Brundle had scored in 12 of his last 13 races as you watch Ayrton Senna circulating with dark clouds still overhead and a chance of rain, a very good chance of rain, I would say, before this is over. It is falling now on some parts of the circuit, we are told. We have 60 laps in the books right now. 12 laps remaining in the Grand Prix of South Africa. Ayrton Senna praying for rain at this point, I'm sure.
I think so, although as the laps go by here, he has less and less chance to catch Alain Prost. But I think Senna would be very happy with a 2nd place position here because it's not so long ago he didn't even think he would drive, but such is the confidence he had in this car. So I think, even from McLaren's point of view, it is a huge effort to build this new car. Oh, there's Martin Brundle. His day is over. We see he also had a neck strap. We see that strap from his helmet down under his shoulder, similar to the one that we knew Michael Andretti was using. But Senna, I think, will be very happy with 6 points, as will everybody at the factory, including Ron Dennis at McLaren.
With Martin Brundle out, we are down to 8 cars remaining. And the only unlapped car is Ayrton Senna. Back down to the pits now. James Allen standing by with Benetton team manager Flavio Briatore.
Flavio, we saw Michael going off to the steward's office. Is he going to make an official complaint about Ayrton Senna?
No, it's not official complaint about Ayrton Senna. He was quite upset, you know. It's understandable after Span, but it's not official complaint. First of all, it's the team that made the complaint. The team not made the complaint at all. Michael now is right, no problem.
What did he say to you when he came back?
You know, always he talk about, I was faster than Senna and I try overtaking, he tried to stop me. But this is part of the game.
Thanks very much, Flavio. Back to you.
A cool-headed Italian, that Flavio Briatore.
Part of the game. Well, sometimes I say that when you do cool things. I think when he sees it on video, he'll realize that he really was not quite close enough to make the full pass.
Now there's Alain Prost motoring along, 54 seconds with 10 laps to go. He has 54 seconds in hand over Ayrton Senna. Now we mentioned earlier that after all their troubles, he and Senna came together face to face and shook hands. They asked Prost about it.
Yeah, sure. I've done that 3 or 4 times. I mean, after what he said last year, I said, okay, that's finished. But I think it's stupid. You know, we are 2 great drivers, I think, and we are doing the same job, taking risks together. And I think that would be not good also for people outside. I mean, that would be very good to have a good year just talking about sport and cars and technology, if you want, of drivers, but not any more polemics. I have enough.
Don't believe all you might hear. Things are not rosy between these two, because Senna, afterwards at a press conference, was asked to discuss the handshaking incident with Prost, and he said, "I do not want to answer that question."
They have a long history, and it's going to be an interesting season. The rain tires are out in the pits for the 8 cars remaining in the Grand Prix of South Africa, and the slickers are out as well. This could get very interesting in the next few minutes. Stay with us. In Kyalami, where Alain Prost continues to lead the way in the South African Grand Prix for Team Willie, as Frank Williams calls his equipe, now beginning its 20th season in Grand Prix racing in great style here in South Africa.
Prost now reels the laps off. Prost is very, very good at not making mistakes. And when you get by yourself out in the lead, concentration is one of the biggest factors you have to keep right on top of all the time. The good drivers like Prost or Senna do not usually make mistakes in this type of situation.
9 laps to go for the professor, Alain Prost, who says he originally wanted to be a soccer player and he trained as a cabinet maker. But as a child, he watched the Grand Prix of Monaco on a holiday with his father and decided that's what I want to do. Bought his first racing kart for 700 French francs and never paid for a racing car thereafter. There are so many ironies involved here. It's a Renault-powered car. 10 years ago, Prost drove his last race before leaving the Renault factory team on very, very bad terms. Now he is back at South Africa once again, and he is going to give them, it would appear, a victory.
Arguably the most sophisticated Formula One racing car at the moment. Maybe McLaren might say theirs is more sophisticated, but the Williams certainly has the racing mileage under them. We mentioned earlier the automatic gearbox. You might think that's a very expensive addition to these Formula One cars. Well, now the designers are saying they're actually cheaper to have a semi-automatic gearbox. Here's why. With the semi-automatic gearbox, you take the human element out of the gear changes. Therefore, you do not miss gears, you do not over-rev. That is a huge saving from the engine department. Also, on dog rings, they say they come out of the gearbox almost brand new. So if you look at it that way, I suppose overall on a service budget, an automatic gearbox may be actually cheaper.
May help save money in the long runs, and virtually every team either has a semi-automatic gearbox or has one in the works. So the critics of the new rules banning such boxes say, why ban them now if everybody has the technology? Ban something that nobody has right now. 4-wheel steering, if you like.
That's the Williams pit. That's Frank Williams right behind the Goodyear technician there. Then all the PR people stand around watching, praying, hoping that 1993 can start off on such a successful note. Remember, they won here last year with Mansell. Now Senna comes up to put a lap on Christian Fittipaldi, who is still running extremely well. Here's the running order here. Top 6, Fittipaldi is in 4th, Berger 5th, and Derek Warwick still hangs on, although he is 2 laps down. But let me tell you, to pick up a World Championship point at the very first race of the year is a tremendous boost to some of the lower teams, like a Minardi or a footwork car.
Like many of the major professional racing series, there are travel monies and appearance monies at stake here. The purse for a Formula One race is in the area of $2.5 million. It is literally a $32 million annual series of 16 races. A victory is worth about $1 million in itself. And considering the kind of money these teams spend, you can imagine what a point is worth. Christian Fittipaldi just ahead of Ayrton Senna in 2nd place.
You can see how much Senna closes up under braking now. It's a Ford V8 ahead, and there's a Ford V8 in Senna's car. This is the very fast S's. Watch what happens uphill. I was going to say I'm sure he'd move over. I thought he was going to move over, but I'm sure he let Senna slide down. Yes, he does. Underneath, under braking, because Fittipaldi has nothing to gain by holding Senna back. In fact, he may even learn something by letting Senna go.
He at least owes him a few favors. Christian Fittipaldi said there were a couple of times last year where Ayrton Senna said, follow me around, I'll give you a tow, and actually helped Fittipaldi qualify for a couple of races.
And of course, Christian now back to full race fitness because he had a bad crash, you remember, last year, broke a vertebrae in his neck. And he said it wasn't the pain that slowed him down, it was the lack of confidence, or the confidence that he lost in himself and in his ability to race, that took him 3 or 4 races to get over. And of course, he scored a point at the last race last year. But a good run, and I'm sure Wilson, his dad, has his fingers crossed that he can come away with points here. Very valuable points for Minardi.
A large peal of thunder just outside our announce position here at Kyalami. The rain is definitely on its way. The leader has completed lap number 66. 6 laps to go for the overall race leader, Alain Prost. There is Gerhard Berger. After all of his problems in the last 2 days, he might yet score a finish for Ferrari.
Some people think Berger is the most highly paid driver in Formula One. People say about $12 million. Remember, he did his deal with Ferrari while all the in-house fighting was going on between Mansell and Prost and Senna. So Berger said, forget that. I'm just going to go do my deal with Ferrari. Let's go down to James Allen.
Well, Derek, it's worth remembering when we're looking at Gerhard Berger going round that he is, in fact, actually testing new bits on this car. Ferrari had all kinds of problems in testing with the new active suspension system. They came here, Gerhard Berger had an appalling qualifying session. He's got some new bits on the car, and it would seem to have worked.
All right, thank you, James Allen. We're just a few laps from the checkered flag as Gerhard Berger drives with fingers and toes crossed, no doubt. Nobody has left the stadium here at Kyalami, South Africa. Stay with us. You may have been able to see a few raindrops there at the top of the hill. The track appears to be reasonably dry as Alain Prost tippy-toes through one of the tightest corners on the circuit. He can take his time now with just a couple of laps remaining. Prost, Senna, Blundell, Fittipaldi, Berger, Warwick, Lato, and a huge peal of thunder now. You saw the lightning flash earlier. The rain is about to pummel down, it would appear, and a real rainstorm in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, is something to see.
Well, now, you just said it, and that could cause an incredibly dangerous situation. The rain does not begin to fall slowly. It will suddenly open the heavens, and on slick tires, you totally lose control if there is any aquaplaning at all. But, however, we only have 3 laps left.
2 laps next time across the start-finish stripe for Alain Prost. He has certainly been given the information that the rain is falling, which brings to mind another of the rule changes anticipated for next year. That is no communication between the pits and the car, either telemetry or otherwise, only hand signals and the pit boards.
I have to say that's an unusual one. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to get to there. I know it's something to do with telemetry and being able to adjust the racing car as it's racing. But remember, very often as the thunder booms overhead again here, very often radio communications can be a major safety factor. They can alert the driver to problems with the car or on the racetrack before he actually puts himself over the limit line and into the danger zone.
Absolutely my point. There is a safety factor involved here. You can see raindrops falling now in the Boma section right here. Beautiful area to watch the race from. Alain Prost turns onto the front straightaway. He will have 2 laps to go this time around. This is going to be very close. Here comes Gerhard Berger, and here comes the race leader, Alain Prost.
And it is definitely survival time right now because Prost, we saw him wipe his visor earlier on. We saw him slow down. If rain begins to fall, he knows he is so far ahead of Senna that he can back off now and be very comfortable.
Oh, and there you see the rainfall obscuring the sky above Kyalami, South Africa. I can imagine this helicopter is probably headed for home fairly shortly, and with it, our Eye in the Sky camera. We apologize for technical difficulties suffered throughout the weekend with our onboard cameras, and now Gerhard Berger's Ferrari begins to smoke.
Oh, this will be a disaster for Berger. He moves over. Prost had to squeeze through, but this will be a disaster for Berger. Having had a nice, consistent run. Here's the rain. Look at the rain on the way down. We could have big problems here before these 2 laps are out. Look at the wheels now. Now beginning to throw the rain up off the racetrack. It's racing on the back of the track, not at the front.
Alain Prost wiping his headgear once again. What a combination, rain and oil. Folks in the stands getting out what were originally parasols, now paras de pluie, I guess it is in French. Rain umbrellas. Now Gerhard Berger slows on the racetrack. Derek Warwick goes around him. There will be 1 lap to go for the race leader, and you can bet that Gerhard Berger is just going to try to keep that Ferrari chugging.
And that was not for a position with Warwick and Berger. Berger is 2 laps down, or Warwick is 2 laps down on Gerhard Berger, so it was not a pass for position. Look at the glow and the sheen on the tires because of the moisture on the racetrack. Very, very tippy-toe eggshell driving by Alain Prost.
Wonder what Ayrton Senna is doing right now. Oh, look at the rain come down. Oh my, that's the hazard flag.
It's supposed supposed to be the oil flag, but they don't have a thunderstorm and a heavy rain flag. But that is a hazard flag, you are right. But look at the rainfall now. Prost better be very careful here. He could still lose this race.
Absolutely. The last gap shown for Ayrton Senna, 57 seconds. Oh, and a lightning strike. We may or may not get through this one. There is Prost. Now huge rooster tails up at the top of the Boma section. Here comes Gerhard Berger with that locomotive of Ferrari.
That flash you saw in the picture just 2 minutes ago, 2 seconds ago, was a lightning strike. It struck our television booth here. So there is still, Prost is not home and free yet.
He's letting other cars through. Warwick comes through to unlap himself. J.J. Leto comes through. Now Leto and Warwick are battling for position. This is for 6th place and that final point.
Berger's off the road. Berger finally, not off the road because of the rain. I think the engine finally blew. So J.J. Leto, in fact, will score a point, but he could score more if he gets by Warwick.
Oh, Gerhard Berger adding insult to injury. He is going to get wet. Look at the rain as you look down upon the Kyalami racetrack. Once one of the most heart-stopping He-Man racetrack in the world. Now this is Leto against Warwick for 2 points instead of 1. Leto, it appears, will take 2.
Well, Leto gets the point. Prost takes the win, but what an effort by J.J. Leto, and Warwick tried to block him, but he wasn't able to quite do it.
And there is Ayrton Senna, who has slowed quite wisely, I think, in the conditions as the rooster tails fly. He will pass the Ferrari of his old teammate Gerhard Berger. What a day of conditions in bright sunshine and 80 to 85 degree temperatures. We have come to a cloudburst.
And a familiar sight, Frank Williams being congratulated at the end of a Grand Prix for another superb effort. We see Christian Fittipaldi there in the shadows of Ayrton Senna, but Senna not enough time to try and catch Prost. But let's face it, these conditions would have been too risky anyway.
Absolutely. Senna comes hydroplaning around. Very gingerly. You saw the car of Michael Schumacher, who collided with Senna, and Derek Warwick is off on his cool down.
Derek Warwick was not able to make it all the way around. In fact, no, this is not the cool-down lap. Warwick had not passed the checkered flag because Prost was behind him.
Absolutely right. Warwick had not crossed the finish line. As Ayrton Senna crosses, oh my, Derek. Let's get to the pits. James Allen standing by.
Well, I'm with Patrick Head, the designer, chief engineer of Williams' team. You must be a very happy man.
Yes, very pleased. Obviously a few nervous moments at the end with the rain coming down.
You did a lot of testing over the winter. You think it's paid off? You've gotten a bit of an advantage over McLaren?
Maybe they had some problems or something. They seemed to be quite quick at the beginning and then rather fade away later on. So it's very difficult to judge the season from one race, but it's very good to start off this way anyway.
A very happy man. Thank you very much, Patrick Head. Back to you.
As you can see, it's dry on that part of the course, but Ayrton Senna is about to hit the slick stuff. We'll be back to Kyalami, South Africa in just a moment. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of South Africa has been brought to you by Skin Bracer Aftershave, more than a great scent by Menon. And by Budweiser, the king of beers. With that fresh, pure, natural taste, nothing beats a Bud. Welcome back to Kyalami, where the skies have well and truly opened. Now that the race is complete, here's a look at our final results. Alain Prost back from his year off with his record-extending 45th career Grand Prix victory, his first since the Grand Prix of Spain in 1990. Ayrton Senna finishes second, followed by Mark Blundell, Christian Fittipaldi, J.J. Leto, and as we saw moments ago, Gerhard Berger picks up the 6th and final point when Derek Warwick, who is a lap down to Berger, failed to complete his final lap before he slithered off the track, even though Berger had already dropped out. The margin of victory, 1 minute 19.824 seconds. Now let's get down to the paddock, where James Allen is standing by with Alain Prost.
Alain Prost, congratulations, pole position and a win, a perfect comeback.
Yeah, exactly. Almost perfect. It's never perfect, but quite happy. You know, today it's very important. I had a lot of pressure, very difficult weekend, but what I've done this weekend, what the team has done for me is really, really good. You know, I really enjoy because now I start to feel the pressure going down. I can imagine, you know, come back after a lot of controversy and people was all waiting for me. What could be my practice, could be the race. So the way it went is perfect for me, exactly perfect.
All right, thank you, James. The professor is back. Alain Prost with a clean sweep of pole, fast lap, and the victory here in South Africa. Here's a look at our Drivers' Championship points. This being the first race, Prost, Senna, Blundell, Fittipaldi, Leto, and Berger pick up 10, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1 points, respectively. In the Constructors' Championship, 6 different constructors in the top 6 positions. Williams-Renault leading with the full complement of 10 points. Checkered flag coverage of today's race will be coming up shortly here on ESPN. We also want to remind you about our next stop on the 1993 Formula One Tour, the Grand Prix of Brazil from Sao Paulo, Monday, March 29th at 12 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Derek Daly, your final thoughts.
Well, a bad day, really, for most of the newcomers, particularly Andretti, Hill, and Zanardi, all out because of crashes. But if McLaren can develop some more speed out of their new car, and Benetton's new car is even faster than their existing car, we could be in for a really good season.
And we hope you'll be with us. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Daly and James Allen. Thanks for being with us. So long from Kyalami, South Africa.